We're going to go away briefly from here to take the news from London, and we shall be back with you in Glencoe in about 15 minutes' time.
So now, the news and sport on 2, with the time 7:25.
Mr Callaghan calls for tolerance within the Labour Party, but both left and right have continued with the battle. Mr Callaghan's appeal has come at the end of a week of public argument within the Labour Party. Even while the opposition leader was talking today, Mr Tony Benn was saying he would go on trying to change the party however long it took. And 3 leading moderates warned they'll have nothing to do with Labour if it goes on talking about pulling out of the common market. Mr Callaghan told the Nottingham Miners' Gala he welcomed ideas, but people shouldn't forget tolerance or restraint.
Nor must we become so fascinated by our own bright ideas to which we are so wedded that we lose sight of the main tasks that the next Labour government will have to face. By all means, let 1,000 flowers bloom and 1,000 ideas flourish. But don't forget, my message to the movement is, keep your eye on the ball. What millions of people want in this country is that Mrs Thatcher and the Tory government should leave office at the earliest possible moment so the Labour Party can repair the damage.
Mr Callaghan didn't actually mention Mr Benn, but there's little doubt he was a prime target. But the theme, attack the enemy, not ourselves, isn't exactly new, and Mr Benn and his supporters don't intend to stop now. By coincidence, Mr Benn was also speaking at a miners' gala, this one in Edinburgh. He told his audience people were fed up with Labour saying one thing in opposition and doing another in government, as over the common market.
The British people must be able to rely upon the credibility of political parties and candidates and upon the integrity of our system of parliamentary democracy if we are to solve the crises that lie ahead, including an end to common market domination of this country. And this must mean more democracy in all our institutions, including the Labour Party itself, and we intend to take our campaign on and to go on with it until it meets with success, however long it takes.
The way the 1975 Labour government had defied party policy in supporting continued British membership of the EEC showed the need for change, said Mr Benn. Labour MPs should ensure the new policy, endorsed at last week's special conference to seek wider and looser links within Europe, was carried out. But meanwhile today, the idea to be put to the annual conference, that Labour would pull Britain out altogether, was fiercely attacked by leading moderates. Shadow Ministers Mr William Rogers and Dr David Owen, and former Minister Mrs Shirley Williams. In a joint statement, they declared that such a commitment to leave the EEC would be irresponsible, opportunistic and short-sighted. We could have no part in it, they say. Pretty strong stuff, and all of which seems to indicate Mr Callaghan would have little hope of a favourable response to his appeal to cool it. The battle seems well and truly joined.
In Northern Ireland, a village shopkeeper who's understood to have had connections with the Ulster Defence Regiment has been shot dead. He was behind the counter of his store in Newton Butler when a masked gunman burst in and opened fire. The dead man's not yet been named. In an earlier incident near Newton Hamilton, a landmine blew up a police car, injuring 4 officers, one of them seriously. The Provisional IRA said they laid the mine. The government of the New Hebrides have formally requested Britain and France, who jointly administer the islands, to send troops to put down the rebellion on the island of Espiritu Santo. The rebels have now released all their hostages, but the New Hebrides Chief Minister, Father Walter Linney, says negotiations are impossible unless they give up their weapons.
Father Linney and his government are furious with Britain and France for failing to fulfill their obligation to end the rebellion. In desperation, he would send his own force, but Britain and France still control the armed police. The rebel leader, Jimmy Stevens, has now released the police and officials he was holding prisoner. But the government says negotiations with Stevens are impossible because his men have not been disarmed. There's French resident commissioner, Monsieur Robert, because he has opposed intervention, only grudgingly accepted next month's independence, and made what's regarded as a partisan broadcast to Frenchmen on Espiritu Santo. Monsieur Robert now proposes to fly to the rebel island for talks with Jimmy Stevens.
In Afghanistan, a fierce battle is said to be underway between Soviet troops and Afghan guerrillas. The fighting is apparently concentrated in towns to the north of Kabul, and casualties are reported to be high on both sides. The rebels say there was a mutiny last month by Afghan army soldiers who attacked a government building and seized tanks and anti-aircraft guns. One of the cinema's most famous trademarks, the Rank organisation Gong, is to disappear from the big screen. Rank say their film production section has been losing money and they've decided to cut their losses, abandoning more than £20 million worth of films already in the pipeline. Christopher Powell reports.
The Rank organisation have been involved in filmmaking since the 1940s. They became famous with a series of classic films featuring some of the best-known British actors and actresses. The company policy has always been to make general appeal family entertainment. Their last big investment in British films was in the 1970s. The films were popular with the critics and the public, but they still didn't make enough money to cover the £10 million investment. The company will still be involved in filmmaking through their Pinewood studios, which they let at a profit to other film companies. Superman and the James Bond films are made there. So how badly does the lack of money affect other British producers?
Well, the industry does desperately need money, undoubtedly, and with a market of our size, one needs some form of subsidy, which we've been asking the government to give. But it is possible to make British films, and Don Boyd's company, of which I'm head of production, has made 5 British films in the last year. So I think it demonstrates that this can be done. And we continue to have complete faith in the future of British films.
Rank-owned cinemas, the Odeons and Gaumonts, will not disappear. The company intend to retain their film distribution division, which made a profit last year.
At the end of the third day of the first Cornhill Test at Trent Bridge, England are in with a chance of winning the match. For a report on today's play and the rest of the day's sports news, here's Michael Blakey.
Few people gave England a chance of winning even one test match during the series with the world champions. This morning they dismissed West Indies for 308. Chasing a deficit of 45 runs, Gooch began well enough. And Boycott looked in good form too against the speed of Holding. Boycott and Gooch had made 46 without loss, which meant England were 1 run ahead. And then tragedy for the opening pair. Gooch ran out at Trent Bridge, the same ground where Boycott ran out Randall on his return to Test cricket. Then the West Indies thought they got rid of Boycott with a score at 67 for 1. But the umpire ruled that Boycott hadn't touched the ball. The reaction of the bowler Marshall perhaps was understandable in the circumstances. But it meant 4 more runs for England. Boycott was in more danger a few minutes later, but from a different source. Thunder and Lightning stopped play at 83 for 2. But when play resumed, the storm didn't appear to have affected Boycott's form. He went on to get yet another Test half-century. At the close, Boycott was still there with Bob Woolmer, and with 8 wickets in hand, England have a lead of exactly 100 runs. Peter Kirsten, Derbyshire's South African batsman, made the top score of the day with an unbeaten double century in the county championship to set Glamorgan an enormous target. New Zealander John Wright, Kirsten's teammate, was run out for 94. Inticarp took 4 Essex wickets for 45. Alistair Hignell scored 89 for Gloucester. Derek Randall scored his first century of the season with 170 for Notts. It means he's scored nearly 300 runs in the last 3 days. Yorkshire were put in by Middlesex, who must be regretting the decision. Kevin Sharp made 100 not out. At Epsom, the second great racing classic of Derby week, the Oaks presented the chance of a rare double. Trainer Dick Hearn offered his Derby-winning jockey Willie Carson the choice of 3 mounts this afternoon, and Carson chose Byrene. Peter Bromley is the commentator.
2 furlongs out, the Dancer and Byrene are first and second. Dick Hearn's pair have drawn clear of VL. Then comes Gift Wrap, Quick as Lightning, trying to get on terms, but he's short of speed at this stage, Quick of Lightning, and it's going to be one of Dick Hearn's, and it's Byrene that hits the front, and VL is hanging, and Byrene is going away from the Dancer and VL. These 3 are clear of Quick as Lightning, who's finishing like a bomb, but it's going to be Byrene. Willie Carson has done the double.
It's the first Derby and Oaks double for a trainer and jockey since 1957, besides earning Byrene's owner nearly £70,000. Another of Dick Hearn's horses, the Dancer, which has only one eye, came third, and those pictures were by arrangement with independent television. The touring British Lions had a heartening success at Johannesburg. Their experimental team beat Transvaal, still a power in South African rugby, by a margin of 26 points, scoring 6 tries to 1. Clive Woodward tried on the wing, scored 2 tries, and Andy Irvine kicked a penalty and obviously is a strong contender for a place in the team for the second test next week. Chris Evert-Lloyd won the French women's tennis title, beating Virginia Ruzic of Romania 6-love, 6-3 in the final. It's Mrs. Lloyd's 159th victory out of 160 matches on clay courts. At the end of more than 1,100 miles of cycling, the milk race ended in Blackpool with a clean sweep for the Russians. They filled 5 of the 6 top places, and for the first time in 29 years, Britain failed to win even a single stage. The final stage of the 14-day race was a gruelling 95 miles. It was won by a Pole who nipped in at the tape, only a bike frame ahead of the Russians. It wasn't enough to deny them from final victory, though.
Do you feel good about this? Happy?
The Russians covered the last 5 miles to Blackpool at an amazing 32 miles an hour, clearly stating their intention for the Olympic road race in Moscow. The winner, Ivan Michtenko, led the rest of the field by 6.5 minutes. The classic test of single-handed sailing, the transatlantic race, began this afternoon with yachts from 18 nations answering the starting gun at Plymouth Sound. Many of the world's most skillful helmsmen are now setting a course across 3,000 miles of ocean from Plymouth via a wide band of routes to Newport, Rhode Island. But as John Wormsley reports, so far it hasn't all been plain sailing.
For one competitor, there wasn't to be a start. The mast on Miss Dubonnet snapped, leaving the skipper, Frenchwoman Florence Artaud, desperately trying to make repairs. It's doubtful whether she'll find a replacement in time to get underway. The other competitors had difficulty too, picking their way through the hundreds of spectator craft that had come out to see the race. When the 89 boats did get away, the fresh westerly breeze gave them a good start. The race attracts big names. Dame Naomi James, an around-the-world sailor, but new to racing. The mono-hulls are well represented. They're the traditional craft of the race. But so too are the multi-hulls. Given the right weather, they must be favourites to win. Some of their skippers are predicting a crossing in under 20 days.
Finally, Dame Margot Fontaine has unveiled a statue of herself on the site of her birthplace at Reigate in Surrey. The statue by Nathan David shows Dame Margot in one of her favourite dancing roles, Ondine the Water Nymph.
I think that this really is the most surprising and the most impressive day of my whole life, because I haven't been able to find anybody else who has actually been alive to pull the string to unveil the statue which stands on their birthplace. I think it is a very rare event, and I'm very conscious of this, and I find it tremendously exciting.
Although many local people attended the unveiling, for Dame Margot it was very much a family occasion. That's the news and sport on 2. Our late news is at 11:25.
Let's now take a look at the weather. Heavy showers and some thunderstorms over England will die away only slowly tonight, with some mist patches developing later. Tomorrow will be another showery day, with the heaviest showers in central and northern England. There'll be some sunshine too, especially in southern and eastern areas in the morning. Northeast Scotland will stay dull and misty, with some bursts of heavier rain in Shetland tonight, reaching northeast Scotland tomorrow. Temperatures will be similar to today. Well now, let's find out just what the weather is like back in Glencoe, where we rejoin Ian Wooldridge.
Well, I think the picture really tells the story there. The clouds drifting past us almost at the same height that the climb is taking place. That's about 1,300 foot up now from the floor of Glencoe. Mercifully, it's not raining anymore. The weather's improved slightly. The mist has gone away. But the miracle, of course, is that this climb actually started, and it's been some wonderful climbing to get up to this point.